The Holy Gospel according to Luke, the 16th chapter. Jesus said, "There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and who feasted sumptuously every day. And at his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who longed to satisfy his hunger with what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs would come and lick his sores. The poor man died and was carried away by the angels to be with Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, where he was being tormented, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. He called out, 'Father Abraham, have mercy on me and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in these flames.' But Abraham said, 'Child, remember that during your lifetime you received your good things, and Lazarus in like manner evil things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. Besides all this, between you and us a great chasm has been fixed, so that those who might want to pass from here to you cannot do so, and no one can cross from there to us.' He said, 'Then, Father, I beg you to send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may warn them so they will not also come into this place of torment.' Abraham replied, 'They have Moses and the prophets. They should listen to them.' He said, 'No, Father Abraham, but if someone goes to them from the dead, they will repent.' He said to him, 'If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead.'" This is the gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. You know, you could have asked, "Why are puppies so cute?" Or, "Why is laughter so great?" Or even, "Why are hugs with loved ones so nice?" But no, you had to go and ask about evil instead. Maybe we should put that puppy back up on the screen. That might be the last nice thing in the sermon. Of course, this particular holy question is one that's been asked for thousands of years. A lifetime can be spent wrestling with the problem of evil. It makes perfect sense that this would be one of the most asked questions of the congregation. Why is there evil in the world? Why is there suffering? Why do bad things happen? Why indeed? Well, before we go far, I need to stipulate a couple things right here at the outset. So, first of all, we're going to make 2 assumptions. One, evil exists, all right? Evil is real. Second, God exists. God is real. We could argue those some other day, but not today. But I also want to manage expectations here, too. This is one sermon. I think I have some insight to offer. I hope to make you think. I trust you'll feel something here today, too, but in no way is this comprehensive. There's no possible way to cover every base or all of the ground that's unearthed by this question. This question of evil is a lifelong one that isn't going to be answered in 14 minutes. So just know this is a small slice. So now that I've hopefully lowered your expectations far enough, let's dig in. Why is there evil in the world? Well, because, as it says in 1 John chapter 4, verse 8, God is love. Now, at first blush, that may seem like the exact opposite of what we would think. I mean, if God is love, why wouldn't God make all the evil go away? Why wouldn't God control things so that bad things didn't happen? I mean, plenty of people see and experience evil and suffering and conclude that God is anything but love. But let's take a moment to think about what it means that God is love, that loving is the essential reality of who God is. Because God is love, God is a God of relationship. And every true relationship is a 2-way relationship. Because if one person in a relationship has all the control and all the power, that's not a healthy relationship. That's codependent at best and abusive at worst, and that's not love. God is love, and God is a God of relationships, so that means we have freedom to act. We call this free will. If we didn't have it, then we would just be puppets whose strings God is pulling. But as William Sloane Coffin put it, God doesn't go around this world with God's finger on triggers, God's fist around knives, God's hands on steering wheels. For those of you who are Stranger Things fans, God is not the mind flayer. If you're not a Stranger Things fan, find one, they'll explain the joke. God is love. So God gives us free will. And we can use our free will to do wonderful and beautiful things. We can create and feel and love and share. And God is delighted when we make these sorts of decisions to be who God created us to be as loving, compassionate, big-hearted people. Yet we are aware that we humans misuse this great gift of free will God gives us too. And there's even a word to describe this: sin. But sin is quite unpopular. Check that. Talking about sin is unpopular. Sin is so popular, everyone does it. We all participate. And sin opposes love. Evil exists, at least in part, because we use our free will to oppose the loving will of God. And Jesus offers us a case study in the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. Now, this isn't the same Lazarus as the guy in John's gospel who Jesus raised from the dead. This is a different guy. This is, in fact, a parable, this powerful story that Jesus is telling. So we heard that this rich man and Lazarus, they both lived near one another. The rich man wore fashionable clothes and lived in a nice, safe, gated community, while poor Lazarus sat outside and went hungry. Both men died. And here's where things get really interesting. Jesus says that Lazarus was carried off by the angels to be with Abraham, which can represent being in the presence of God. The rich man, however, found himself in torment in Hades, the abode of the dead. And as the rich man cries out for relief, Abraham tells him, "Child, remember that during your lifetime you received your good things, and Lazarus in like manner evil things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. Besides all this, between you and us a great chasm has been fixed, so that those who might want to pass from here to you cannot do so, and no one can cross from there to us." And here's the big question. The question where our understanding of this parable and really our understanding of the nature of God and good and evil hinges. Who fixed the chasm? That is, who created the deep ditch, this grand canyon that separated Lazarus and the rich man? Now, typically it's thought that God did it. That God sent Lazarus to heaven and the rich man to hell. And we might think, well, the rich man's getting what he deserves. But if we really believed that, wouldn't we, for instance, want our kids to grow up to be like Lazarus? If this parable is about getting what we deserve, wouldn't we want to be covered in sores and licked by stray dogs? Wouldn't we impoverish our kids and grandkids so they could join those angels and Abraham? But we don't. In fact, most, if not all of us, either live like the rich man or wish we could. nice clothes, good food, comfortable house, the finer things in life. And the thing is, we don't know if the rich man really treated Lazarus poorly or not. It doesn't say. I mean, we don't know, but the rich man may have been a respected pillar of his community, good at his job. He may have raised his kids well and given a portion of his income to charity. He may have served on nonprofit boards and volunteered in his community. He may have heard a really fine sermon the previous weekend about what it means to have enough, and his heart was really warmed by that message. He may have even believed that he was a child of God, loved beyond measure. We don't know. Jesus doesn't say. But Jesus doesn't say he was a jerk either. I mean, we do know that the rich man had 5 brothers and he cared a lot about them. And in fact, Jesus doesn't say if Lazarus was a nice guy or not. I mean, Lazarus may have been very pleasant, or he may have been a real crank. Jesus doesn't say. From what we do know, however, I know that my life and the lives of the people around me sure look a lot more like the rich man than Lazarus. So I sit up and listen to Jesus here. Now let's remember that God is love, and God gives us freedom, free will. And here's what Jesus tells us. The rich man created that chasm, that canyon, that vast expanse that separated him and Lazarus. We know this because as he's in torment and just wants a sip of cool water for relief, he doesn't ask Lazarus for it. He asks Abraham to tell Lazarus to do it. And then he asks Abraham to tell Lazarus to go and warn his brothers. The rich man did not see Lazarus as a fellow human being, as a brother. He saw Lazarus as his servant and treated him as someone less than him. The rich man could not imagine that Lazarus, this poor sick soul, would be worth talking to or associating with. The rich man misused his free will to draw a line between himself and Lazarus. He was on one side and Lazarus was on the other, and he could not imagine that Lazarus was his equal, that Lazarus had value, that Lazarus was worth relating to. And that line was a great chasm set between them by the rich man. There is evil in this world, at least in part, because we misuse the freedom and free will given to us by our loving God in order to draw lines between us and them. And oh, how we love to draw those lines between us and them. And wherever we draw the line, well, then they, whoever they are, they become the enemy. That's the story of the Holocaust and the line the Nazis drew between themselves and Jewish people. That's the story of 9/11 and the line the terrorists drew between themselves and Americans. That's the story of the Crusades and the line the Christians drew between themselves and Muslims. And that's the story you may have heard about last month. There was a baseball game between 7-year-olds in the town of Lakewood, Colorado, that wound up in a brawl between parents from both teams over a call made by the 13-year-old umpire. 7-year-olds playing, a 13-year-old ump, and a violent brawl. Parents, is this what we're about? Us and them, my team and your team, and I will fight you over it. And yes, it's dumb, and it's ridiculous, and it's evil. When we value winning over love, evil will always win. When we value being right over love, evil will always win. When we value our power over love, evil will always win. When we draw the line between us and them, evil will always win. The haves and the have-nots, that's the line the rich man in the parable drew. Republicans and Democrats, people born here, people born there, young and old, white and non-white, binary and non-binary, straight and gay, and on and on and on and on. And here's the thing. Just like Lazarus was with Abraham when the rich man drew the line, whenever we draw a line between us and them, Jesus is always standing on the other side. Always. That's the scandal of God's love. That's the scandal that God is love. And God's love is so contrary to the ways of accumulation and competition, so contrary to us and theming that we struggle to fathom it. Terry Fretheim, one of my most favorite seminary professors and theologians, says this: one might wish that God would force compliance to stop evil in its tracks. But for the sake of a genuine relationship, God has chosen not to micromanage life. Rather, God chooses to immerse the divine life into evil's very heart, supremely in Jesus Christ, and overcome it from within rather than overpower it from without. Because the follow-up question to why is there evil in the world always has to be, what does God do about it? Because evil is not overcome with evil. Evil is only overcome with love. And thankfully, God is love. And God's love is most powerfully shown in the cross of Jesus Christ. God makes it clear in the cross of Christ that violence will never overcome violence. God responds to the violence of the cross through self-giving love. And yes, this can be dismissed as naive and weak. But I would offer that we've never actually taken Jesus seriously enough to try overcoming evil with love. But it turns out that when Jesus says, love your enemies, he means it. Enemies are not overcome by annihilating them, but by loving them. God is love, and that's a problem when we misuse the gift of free will that comes from our loving God. But God is love. That's how God addresses the problem of evil in us and around us. And God invites us to erase the lines between us and them and work together with God and one another to love. To love our neighbors as ourselves, to love our enemies, to love the parents and kids on the other team, to love those different from us, to love those who we are told to hate, to love the cranks around us, to love the cranks within us. To love because God first loved us. To love because God is love. Amen.